Hi pumpkin pies, I have a great many video requests that I want to make videos for. I don't make a video every time I get a video request. I really like to stay on task with what I want to do with my channel, and I think it's really important for anyone who's thinking of starting a channel or putting out any kind of content in a blog or online in any way, that they keep things relatively on task. If something doesn't interest them, if they don't want to make content about it, then they shouldn't. I think it's got to cut both ways. So what I tend to do is I either direct somebody to something that is useful that somebody else has done, or I say, hey, I've already kind of done something a bit like this, and link them there. But there are a list of questions that I do get asked quite regularly, or that I have been asked recently, that I've thought I would like to make a video about, and this topic is one of those things. I haven't written any notes, and unhelpfully I'm not at my house at the moment. I'm staying at my mum's house, and my book of shadows and my book of mirrors are both there, so important things like dates and stuff like that may need to be omitted. But basically, fairly recently, somebody asked me, how do you contact your matron? How do you get signs from her? How do you communicate with her? How does it work? What's the setup? And that's something that I've been asked before, and it's something that I'm going to address with this video. I'm going to link below to two videos that I made on World Goddess Day, which also may help those of you who are looking for a matron or patron, or who want to kind of find out more about what I think about connecting with deity. They might be interesting videos for you to check out. As I think I've mentioned in one of those videos that I've linked below, but it could kind of stand to be said again, I came across my matron when I already was aware that I needed a death goddess, that it was a death goddess that I wanted, that it was a death goddess that I'd be able to connect to and relate to. And even though you could say that that decision came out of cognitive function, like it was a straightforward decision with no intuition or divine guidance attached to it, I would argue that, you know, aside from the fact that death goddesses are obviously very, you know, they reflect pertinent parts of my nature and my character, my interests and my way of being in the world, I also think it's very possible that that could have come from, you know, from a kind of less rational and more kind of intuitive perception of what was needed, and an intuitive kind of preordinance, is that what I'm looking for? Like a way of knowing that maybe it would be hell that would eventually show up, and it was kind of my intuition, a download from somewhere, just setting me off on that path, giving me that clue. So I consciously knew that I was going to be looking at death goddesses, and I came across hell and I felt a sense of familiarity. I'm not going to say it was fireworks coming out of the sky. I'm not going to say that she spoke to me or anything like that, because it didn't happen that way. I saw her, I felt like I'd seen her before. I felt like there was something there, this sense of familiarity. Her name, the images of her that have been painted and depictions of her. There was some kind of pull, there was something there that I felt that I had to return to. And I think a lot of it was to do with stuff that I couldn't decipher, stuff that was actually beyond me to decipher. I mean, Jung said that intuition isn't other to rationality, it's just outside the realm of rationality, like it's beyond what rationality can do, but it's not necessarily the opposite of rationality. It goes in tandem, but intuition is kind of that realm beyond, where we wouldn't necessarily call it cognitive function to be able to get hold of that information. And so I think there was a lot of that stuff going on. Like I said, the familiarity, I felt drawn to her and all that kind of stuff. And I think the other thing was that she was very representative of things that I'm particularly interested in, kind of especially with regard to psycho-spiritual topics, like the fact that she's half light and half dark, half skeleton and half maiden. So this idea of acceptance of death and the life-death life cycle, this idea of persona and then ego and then unconscious, this idea of layers in the psyche, the idea of fear and what it means to play with the notion of fear, the idea of shadow work and the idea of the role of the shadow in human nature. Like all of this stuff she seemed to represent to me. And I just thought that there was something really clever about it and something really clicked about it. And then when I read Kevin Crossley's Norse myths, and when I read other stuff online with regard to myths that specifically involved her, like the myth of Balder, descriptions of her realm, descriptions of the plate and the knife that she has, descriptions of the two guardians of the bridge and all this kind of thing. I was just like, I just felt like I'd been there before. I felt like her kingdom was a place that I'd been before. It was a place that I'd seen in dreams. It was a place that I could relate to, that I could connect with. And really there was just so much psycho-spiritual content coming up. And then when I looked at her relationship with her father and who her father was, and then her siblings and all that kind of thing, actually what I realised was very much what it is in a Jungian's nature to realise, which was that I was living out the personal version of this big transpersonal myth. There were lots of things that made sense, that clicked for me, that were representative or reflective of my own life or reflective of something that I felt. So that was really where it stemmed from. I did not kind of immediately dedicate myself to her. I learned over a period of months, and I really kind of got to know how I felt about her, and things obviously just kept coming into consciousness. Once you open that door, things do come into consciousness. That's why I often say, if you want to work with a god or goddess, actually just open up the channel. Just go for it. Just say, I'm here. I'm ready for messages from you. I welcome you if you want to come into my life. I feel like you're on the sidelines. If you have something to say, let's have it, kind of thing. And I often say to people, do that, you know, because then things do start to kind of come together. And okay, maybe there will be tumbleweed, maybe there will be silence, but quite often, once you open yourself up and you are that receptacle for spirit in one guise or another, things will come into fruition. I want to stress that I'm not a hard polytheist, but I don't really think there's any contradiction between soft polytheism and the way that I think that I communicate with my matron deity. I don't believe the imagination is a fallacy. I believe it's a real place. I believe it's a real realm. I believe it's where, you know, things begin. It's the genesis of everything that I can see in this room right now. So there'd be no reason to think it's not a real place. I don't believe that my matron deity is exactly as a human being would be, but on another realm. But I believe that her energies, everything that is bound up in her image, is something that I can work with, something that I can communicate with and tap into. And actually what it does for me is it actually amplifies reverence when I worship her as her, rather than take these energies and these kind of swirling cosmic vibrations and kind of link them all together and just give them a random name and say, this is what I'm worshipping, this is what I'm connecting with, this is what's feeding me spiritually. I would far rather look at an embodied depiction, something personified and something with so much power behind it. I always say hell is real because of the amount of times that her name has come off the tongue of a Viking or a Norse person. Do you know what I mean? Hell is real because of the way that she's threaded through the veins and the arteries and the capillaries of Scandinavia. Hell is real because of that stuff. She's been made real over time by the incredible energy that's been invested into her. She's a fucking egregore. And so that's how I feel about gods and goddesses. And so I do think that they are real in a lot of ways. So I just want to stress that for a kick-off for anybody who might be new here and might not be aware of what I believe. I am a pantheist pagan, and I really just believe that the energies that have been built up, the respect, the reverence, the power that's been built up and kind of charged into these images, these names, these deities, that's what makes them real. And do they have a life beyond us now because of that? I don't know. I've definitely dabbled in that area and I've definitely thought about that kind of thing. But the joy of the path is that there is really no right or wrong. It's metaphysics. Nobody knows. And that's really the joy of it, is that it's one of those things that I love to contemplate and get lost in and come back to and kind of rearrange my thoughts on it. But I don't think it's necessarily that important for me to know. I just don't, you know. I would far rather just know that my relationship with her is kind of going as it is and being as it is. I've realised that I've rambled for a really long time about kind of setting you up, like setting the foundations for where I'm going to go from this point on. The question was, how do you communicate with your deity? Not the long garbled explanation of how you actually got to have her as a matron. But I suppose just to finish up, I think it was either a year or 18 months. I know in the other video I explain exactly kind of the timeline, but I don't have my Book of Mirrors on me now, so I can't see the date of when I did my first address to her, which was my dedication. But I dedicated myself to her. I wrote this big full-on ritual. I'm talking, it was elaborate, it was ostentatious, it was so verbose and so loquacious and delicious and just like honouring. It was really honouring. And I really felt at that point that I was ready to do that. And from that point on, she became my matron. And it still feels right, you know. And actually, just the day before yesterday, when I came to my mother's house, I asked my boyfriend to pick up some incense from the bedroom, and he will know what I'll want. It will be like opium and angelica and the usual suspects. And he picked up randomly apple orchard, which I normally don't burn except around the time of Samhain, because apples are sacred to my matron, and they are often what I will offer to her, and so the apple orchard incense just really dances with that nicely. And so I normally preserve it for Samhain, which I feel is kind of like the time of year when I would obviously totally venerate her and I go all out. And I can just actually imagine her finding it quite funny. But yeah, it's really a thing. So I don't normally burn apple orchard incense. I burned it as soon as I realised he brought it with us. I burned some, and I instantly felt this overwhelming, overpowering sense of, I just wanted to go outside in the dark and prostrate myself on the grass and dig my hands into the earth and just worship her so hard. And it was amazing. And so the first thing that I would say then about communicating with a deity or connecting with your matron or patron is have associations. Have those things that just link you straight in. You know, when you smell a perfume that, you know, your grandmother wore before she died, or your first boyfriend wore, you know, a certain type of fragrance, and when you smell it again, you feel overwhelmingly nostalgic or overwhelmingly angry or whatever. Those triggers, smells particularly, can be such incredible triggers, and they can link you straight back into some of the most devout moments that you had when you were kind of dancing with deity, as it were. So I think that's a really important thing. Reading the myths, anything you can get your hands on is very, very important. Even if you're the god or goddess you're trying to connect with is very, very what they would call minor and has very few stories attached to them. You could try reading other perceptions of what other people have felt when they've worked with a specific deity. Make sure that you write down all the impressions that you feel, even if you're just thinking about it on quite a cognitive and conscious level and you don't really feel that anything too cosmic is going down. Doesn't matter, write about it. Definitely write it down, record that stuff. I think that learning about the people who would have venerated the deity that you are looking for a connection with is important. Learn about the climate, the socio-political situation, what kind of people were they, what kind of culture was it. Remember, these are the people that actually kind of downloaded and birthed the archetype that you are looking to work with. So specifically connect with them, find out what kind of people they were, you know, what kind of sense of humour did they have, what kind of stuff did they wear, what was their jewellery like, what was their art like, you know. There's so much information out there and so far you can go with that exploration, and I definitely wouldn't discount it. I think that is a really important part of connecting with a deity, is connecting with the civilization that actually birthed their concept into being. The first time that I got a really strong message from my matron that I felt like unbelievable breakthrough thunderbolts coming out of the sky, oh my god, I feel so plugged in right now and I feel like that's her, was when I was really, really doubtful about whether or not to leave my job and go full time with my business. I knew that it was doable financially, although it certainly wasn't going to be like glamorous, all out 6-figure abundance. It was just going to be like scraping by. But I felt like if I don't do it at some point, then I'm not going to be able to kind of deliver the content that I want to deliver and be consistent and show up for my clients and take the amount of readings that I want to give to people. I won't be able to take the amount of business if I have this full-time job. And the other half of me was like, you don't have a right to do this, it's not your time yet, there's other factors, think about this before you do it, blah, 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 blah. Mate, what if you leave your job and then it all goes dead and nobody wants to work with you anymore suddenly out of nowhere? And so all this fear-based crap. And it was a really weird time for me because I had people in my life telling me how incredible I was and how much I was capable of and how much I was in a way selling myself short, and hearing those things was really, it was bolstering and it was nurturing, but it was also really hard because I was scared. And of course other people can encourage you, but they don't ultimately have to make the decision. You have to make that decision. And I was really, I don't think I was even looking for a sign. I was just so in a tiz, you know, there was so much mental clutter. And I was walking home from work over the bridge and I just remember two great big ravens standing on either side of the bridge, and it was like they were waiting to greet me, and they looked so majestic, and they were just huge, and their feathers had that blue sheen, you know, and they looked like gargoyles just waiting to receive me, to honour me, to be there just to witness me. And I walked straight through them, and they just stood there, statuesque, proud, as if they were chaperoning me, as if they were saying, you're safe, you know, we've got this. And ravens are sacred to hell, you know, it's a really big deal, you know, Odin's ravens and stuff. So I was moved, and I took it as a sign, and I went ahead and I did what it was in my soul to do, and I never looked back. And that was for me, and that was a couple of years ago now nearly, so that was for me the first big sign. But before that, I wasn't really looking for signs necessarily. I was just looking for those emotional attachments, those moments of linking in, those feelings of you know, having a part of her within me. For me, the whole idea of her being my matron, or of any goddess being my matron, would really be a sense of how can I see myself reflected in her, and how is she reflected in me, and how does her energy and how does her strength actually address something within me and teach me about myself. And I think that's why people are so worried about picking the right matron and kind of connecting with a matron that really speaks to them, and they're looking for that thunderbolt moment all the time, or that kind of moment of majesty that comes out of nowhere, where they're like, oh my god, you know, a matron, a goddess actually sat next to me on the bus and said, I'm your matron. People want it that obvious, they want that little subtlety, because they really want to get it right. And what I would say is, doesn't matter about getting it right. Get to know a goddess slowly. You can open up the door to multiple deities, gods or goddesses. I think that's okay. I didn't set out to look for a matron. I set out knowing that I wanted to connect with a goddess that I suspected would go on to become quite central to my practice. But really what I did was I opened up doorways. I went to Bast because she was one of the first that I was fascinated by as a child, that I really, really resonated with her energy. I went to Athena. Again, I resonated with the energy of Athena. I played her in a play when I was 6 and in a play when I was 10. And I was fascinated by her. I went to Kali because there was that connection with Kali. I opened up these doorways and I was just like, just give me what you got, hit me with it. I want some seriously divine feminine downloads. Let's have it now. And actually I was researching death goddesses, and it was fascinating. I am a bit of an amateur thanatologist. I'm fascinated by death anyway, and I'm particularly fascinated by what different cultures thought about death in different civilizations. And so I was researching death goddesses, and something just made me turn back. Like, something just made me scroll back up. Whatever, I don't remember exactly where I discovered her, but something made me go, I feel that I've been here before, that I've seen this image, this kind of description, this kind of bundle of death-like joy. I've seen her before, I know her kingdom, I want to visit her kingdom, I'm intrigued, I want to know more. That's all it takes. It's not a case of like, I found one that's taken my fancy, now I have to dedicate straight away. Don't rush into dedication. Dedication should feel special, it should feel potent, absolutely. And when you receive a sign from a god or goddess and you feel quite sure that that is a sign, that is a message, that's the cosmos's way of saying, hey, you guys are linked in and you can learn more and there is something there for you, then make sure that you open up to other signs, either of the same type or different. Hell has pretty much spoken to me exclusively in ravens and crows. But she also speaks to me in other ways. There are other signs that I tend to be able to see, and some of them are emotional, some of them are just kind of auras that surround me, and I feel almost like I need to go to her. There's a lesson, there's something that I can really take from the equation. And when deaths occur in my life, when loss occurs, when disappointment occurs, when release has to happen, surrender, flow, acceptance, when I have to shake something out, then she's there. The energy is stronger because I've connected with what her energies are actually associated with, and it is very much about transience and metamorphosis and knuckling down and getting on with it, accepting that nothing is eternal, that everything is temporary, and to actually just release that and kind of learn how to unshackle my ego-based fear and just let it go. And a lot of the time she's just really close to me then, because I feel like she's almost sending me that, and if she's not sending me that, then she's bloody well helping me with that. So either way, it's cool with me. This has been so garbled and I could talk for a lot longer. I'm not certain that I've answered the question as succinctly, definitely not succinctly, but as accurately as I could have done. But just, yeah, associations, anything that you can associate. That's why a lot of people have statuettes and stuff like that, or specific herbs that are associated with a deity. Apple orchard incense is a big deal for me. I have a crone goddess oil that I bought from Joey Morris's shop, Starry Eyed Supplies. I'll link that below. When I put that oil on, it's time for hell. I feel it all over my body. Oh, I've got a message. Yeah, I feel it all over my body and it's beautiful. I have crone goddess beads, which I also bought from Joey Morris's shop. Again, these are just associations, you know. I have a book that's specifically for hell. I have a book where I write poetry that's just for her. I have a book where I write down the addresses that I make to her. Again, associations, things that are specific to your deity, and you can build up that relationship and build up that relationship. I have a central prayer that is based on the prayer of Our Lady that I say for hell, and I devised that prayer 3 or 4 years ago now, and I have another few kind of mantras that I say while I go through the prayer beads. And if I really want to honour her, or if I want to ask her to be on side during the day or to give me the lesson that I need, I will use those mantras. And actually, the more that you say them, the more that you repeat them, the more power that they're invested with. Like I was saying at the beginning, that's how power is invested in these archetypes, in these deities in the first place, right? So if you have a prayer that you say in honour of that goddess or god, if you have a mantra that you use only for that goddess or god, you know, if there's a way that you kind of open sesame with your words and your energy, and that way is specific to the deity that you want to work with, or specific to your matron or patron, then good things will happen, good things will come of it. And I discovered that my patron is Tia, and as a result of that, I have been working on different word combinations, different ways of calling on his energy, different ways of letting him know that I'm open to what he has to teach me and show me. So I've already learned with my relationship with hell that that's a way of doing it, is to have things that you repeat, have things that you kind of cement and solidify, words that you use that kind of signify that you're open to the energy of that one god or goddess, and you're kind of showing up and you want them to show up too. Just different ways to honour them, you know. For me, writing poetry is a big deal, and I write a different address to hell every Samhain, and quite often every Yule and every autumn equinox as well. I love doing that, and I just adore her, and I just love kind of painting pictures in my mind of what her kingdom looks like and connecting with her kingdom on the astral. I love nothing more than to visit Helheim on the astral. I just imagine going over that bridge and going into that icy apple orchard and seeing her gigantic throne and just being surrounded by the dark and the stillness and the wisdom and the integration and the shadows. So astral tripping too, go to it, you know, that's another way. But I really could talk forever. No idea how long this video is now, so I'm going to wrap it up. But I hope that that's been informative, and also given you guys a little bit more of an understanding of my relationship with my matron. And until next time, very, very much love, and keep tripping on the astral and keep doing your cosmic thing. Blessed be.